Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. It's right around 2 o'clock. Hi everyone, welcome to today's Next Century Cities webinar on unique applications. My name is Kat Blake and I'm the Policy and Program Manager at Next Century Cities. We're really excited to have this opportunity to highlight some cool projects that present innovative solutions for municipalities. I'm going to go over a few quick housekeeping details before we get started. First, we are asking everyone to remain on mute throughout the webinar so that we can reduce the impact of background noise. Second, if you have questions throughout the webinar, which we absolutely encourage, please type them in the chat box located on the bottom of the right hand of your screen. You can either send them to all or just to the organizers, and we will be sure to address them throughout the webinar. You can also email your questions directly to me at my email address, which is listed on this screen, and I will also put that email address in the chat box. Finally, this webinar will be recorded and shared on our resource page later today, should you want to refer back to it or share it with others. So we're lucky to have three wonderful panelists joining us on this call today. We have Mark Balch, Head of Product Performance Management and Data Platform at OpenGov. We have Arik Bronshtein, co-founder and CEO of Urban Leap. And we have Tony Shawcross, the founder and executive director of the Open Media Foundation. Chris Mitchell will be moderating today's panel. Chris is the director of the Community Broadband Networks Initiative at the Institute for Local Self-Reliance and the policy director here at Next Century Cities. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris to get us started.
Thank you. And this is going to be a pretty straightforward webinar presentation. We're going to start with Mark and OpenGov and hear his presentation, see a demo, I believe, and then move through each of the additional presenters. We'll have a few questions for them. You should feel free to always just drop a question in the chat as it comes up, or to send it to Kat C. Blake at nextcenturycities.org by email, and she will get it to us. But there will be time for questions, but feel free to ask your questions ahead of time in the chat box. So with that, let's start with Mark Balch with the OpenGov. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Kat and Chris. Hi, this is Mark. Appreciate everyone's time here today. I wanted to first give a quick introduction on what OpenGov does. We are a budgeting and performance company. Our mission is driving more effective and accountable government, and we do that by providing context and information and tools so that government staff can work across departments on the key outcomes that you're trying to achieve, and make sure that your citizens and your public are engaged in that process so that everyone understands what's going on and we can make the best decisions for the best outcomes in our community. If we can advance to the next slide, please. OpenGov is trusted by more than 2,000 governments across the United States. We work with states, we work with counties, cities, towns, as well as school districts and many other government entities to help them in their budgeting and performance and working with their public. OpenGov is delivered in the cloud. We are a modern cloud software application, and as such, broadband is a really key part of OpenGov, because it's really important that not just folks within the same city hall are able to work with each other, but across locations within that government, and then also making sure that the community around that, that set of government staff are understanding the decisions that are being made, as well as the data driving those decisions. If we can go to the next slide, please. One of the biggest ways that we can improve the effectiveness of government is by sharing context with all the different constituents who are involved in the decision-making process. And OpenGov helps our government customers to effectively operate across the strategic planning cycle. It's about providing that context and breaking out of the silos that have traditionally hampered communication and sometimes can lead to distrust. For example, at the beginning of a year, when you are creating your plan to decide what your priorities and spending are going to be for the coming year, it's very powerful to engage your stakeholders ahead of time to make sure that your community, that your volunteers, that your city staff are understanding the key challenges and goals that are facing your government. And then as that plan is solidified, it then comes time to develop your budget and to make those tough spending decisions with the limited resources that you have so that you can get the most effective outcomes. When you adopt that budget, it's really important to make sure that those funds are being spent in the most effective way possible. And OpenGov helps you not only to make those budgeting decisions, but also to then monitor and report on your performance on an ongoing basis. So if you're doing this not just once a year, but you're doing this every day, every week, every month, you have a data-driven process to bring in citizen feedback, to look at all the different departments and functions in your government, and then ultimately help you to drive decisions in a transparent process. Let me go to the next slide, please. This is really about hard, quantifiable results. Our government customers have seen a dramatic decrease in the amount of time spent budgeting, making it far easier to get access both internally as well as providing information to the public at large. And ultimately that results typically in being able to have the people, the important hardworking people in your government, free them up to be doing the more impactful work versus doing the more mundane work of running reports and trying to figure out what's actually going on. So let me spend a little bit of time to share my screen here and show you exactly how OpenGov works. If you could enable me to share the screen, please. Thank you. Here's an example of a smart cities story that OpenGov is able to bring to your community, where the government is able to provide your narrative for what are the key goals that you and your mayor and your city council are trying to achieve. Let's say, for example, that you want to roll out broadband, and it's really important to be able to bring economic vitality to your community by giving everyone access to modern resources and infrastructure. So you can make the case, you can basically show with real data, not with conjecture, the progress that has been made, the outcomes that are being achieved, how much infrastructure has been deployed, how much resource different communities and different demographics have access to. OpenGov lets you track this information on an ongoing basis and effectively present it out to your community and to your internal stakeholders in a highly consumable format that is rich in context, so that there is greater trust and better decision making. We have lots of customers, again, governments across the country who are doing this. Here's an example from Anoka County in Minnesota, providing transparency into their capital outlays for IT infrastructure. So as we have all these IT projects, let's explain to our community how the money is being spent so that we can build trust, show that there are outcomes being achieved, and then during our upcoming budget cycles, be able to allocate funds and bring everyone along with you. We're also able to show this information geospatially. You may want to be able to show across your community, where is broadband spending being made? What are the communities that are affected? What kind of demographics are benefiting from these investments that are being made? So through lots of these powerful visualizations, OpenGov allows both your internal city staff or your county staff, as well as the community around you, to have visibility. Visibility builds trust and facilitates a conversation. So you can now get citizen feedback back into your budgeting process and make sure that everyone understands ultimately how these scarce resources are being spent. Our customers are able to build all of this content, all of these visualizations very easily without having to be, a PhD in data science or having deep financial backgrounds even. OpenGov has easy to use cloud tools for everyday people to get a greater understanding into the workings of government. And so whether it's facilitating public feedback, whether it's providing a transparent budgeting process or transparency in how government operations and services are being delivered to the public, we're able to bring everyone together to have a more effective and accountable government. Wanted to thank everyone for the time and look forward to having the conversation here.
Thank you, Mark. We have one question that popped in right away that I'd like to get to before we move on to our next presenter, and then there will be a more extensive Q&A after that, after we go through the three presenters. That question is, how does the OpenGov tool or tool set interface with the budget? Is it itself a budget tool, or how does it interact with budget tools?
Yes. So OpenGov is a budgeting tool. Our cloud software allows governments to go through their budgeting process, both the ongoing expenses, capital budgeting, and that is integrated with workflow. It is integrated with other government accounting systems and ERP systems, so that the information that is used in that budgeting process is high fidelity, real-time data regarding where the money is being spent, what are the different departments who are asking for certain budget line items, who's approving those budget line items, and mapping that back to your strategic goals, back to your strategic plan. What are we trying to achieve? How much money are we spending on that goal? Are we getting the outcome that we are looking for?
Great, thank you. Keep an eye out for additional questions, and we'll be looking for additional questions here when we get to the Q&A period. For now, we're going to move on to Arik Bronshtein with Urban Leap. So I think we're going to have another demo here that'll be on the order of 6 to 8 minutes, and then we'll clarify if necessary and move on. So please take it away, Arik.
Cool, thank you very much. So maybe just starting with a short explanation, we created a platform that helps. Can you move to the next slide, please? And so Urban Leap is a platform that helps cities and counties to test and adopt new solutions and actually accelerate urban innovation. Next slide. So I think that we all know that the challenges of local governments are high. It's the number of people and population is growing, and the infrastructure is aging, budget is shrinking, and just the challenges are just growing and growing. But on the other hand, the opportunities, the technologies out there can help. And we can see that there are so many things from IoT to autonomous driving to broadband that can help cities and counties to improve the quality of life for the residents. Next slide, please. So this is why we believe that the best way to solve this problem is this innovation gap is by testing. Some cities are calling it testing, experiments, proof of concept, demonstration program, piloting, but basically the idea is that before scaling, you should test, start small, see if it makes sense, and only if it does, then move to a full procurement of the project. Next slide. So this is why we built Urban Leap. It's basically a platform that helps the local government to actually streamline the whole process of this experiment. So from getting the idea, vet them, take a decision if it makes sense to explore it, and then together with the vendor, plan how the pilot is going to look like. What are the goals, the metrics for success, the deliverables, budgets, etc. Then we know that the contract is a painful part, so help streamline this process, and I will explain more in the demo. Move to the live pilot, track tracking all the metrics and the milestones that were defined in advance, and then take the right decisions about the next step. Last slide, please. So, the main thing about the platform, I think the main benefits are, if you're looking from the pilot manager perspective, you get all the document in one place, really centralized place where the documents, the data, the proposals, everything in one place, and it's very easy. It also creates transparency. So it's break the silos in the organization. You can learn the best practices from other departments and really create a very transparent organization. It helps the pilot manager also to move much faster with a lot of automation around reporting and the contracting, and really communicate much better with his team and the vendor. From the leadership of the city, it's really helped them to understand to see the full innovation map of the city. So who is doing what are the bottlenecks, and learn how to manage it better. Now, if you think about our vision, so we want to create a community of progressive cities that can share and learn best practices. At the moment, we are working with a few cities and counties all over the country. So from Palo Alto and Hayward in the Bay Area to Pittsburgh and Kansas City and the city of Las Vegas, and also the county of San Mateo and Sacramento Area Council of Government. So all different types of local governments, and we really believe that innovation, this is the right place to be now, and we really want to help local governments to do that. Now I would like to give a very short demo on the platform. Cool. So basically, there are two main screens of the platform. The first one is the proposals, where you can see all the opportunities of that the city can choose from, and then the pilots, where you manage actually the live pilot in the different stages. So the planning, the contracting, the tracking, and the evaluation. So let's start with the proposals, and one example that cities are using us is to get proposals from local startups. So the city of Pittsburgh is now running a program, it's called PGH Lab, where they want to support local startups. And they use our platform to manage all the whole process. And they're using scorecard in order to choose which one of those startup they want to work with. Now you ask yourself, how does pilots getting into the platform? So one way is to invite them in a very easy way, to just invite the vendor. But the other way is just using this kind of a vendor form in your website where startup can submit proposals to the city and help them to improve efficiency or save time and money for the benefit of the residents. Maybe because we don't have a lot of time, so I would like to show you one example of a pilot and the different benefits that you can earn from it. So the first stage is obviously getting a proposal and learning about the opportunity. But basically, the main thing is to create a team of people that can take a decision if it makes sense or not. So there is a definition for the pilot managers, the different people in the team. So it can be from the city, from the county, the different department, so the IT, the public works, whatever, and also academia if it's relevant, or advisors or consultants. If you want to add a vendor to communicate, that's also easy. Obviously, there is a discussion channel where the city can say, hi, what do you think? And start communicating around that and see all the documents in one place. This is a new feature, or it's not a big feature, it's help you to really understand what's the next steps and help to move forward faster. We really believe that it's important to take decision based on data, and so it's important to define all those things in advance. So what are the goals of the project, the milestones, the metrics for success, So those things are super important to define in advance, and I will show you in a minute how we track them live. Regarding the contracting, we know that one of the pains is that it takes a lot of time to contract with the city. So it's very easy just to request from us a very advanced draft based on our best practice and the planning. So it's actually the scope of work, and we can create a very advanced draft that can save a lot of time to the pilot manager and the legal department. Now, regarding the tracking, that's a place where once the pilot is alive, the vendor and the team can communicate and can learn about for each milestone if it's met or not met. So just update it, and also the metrics, so you can see if the pilot is actually saving time, saving money, what's the usage of the pilot, and if there is any surveys, you can input the data. Now, the last stage is obviously taking a decision, and we help the city or the pilot manager to see if he met or unmet his goal that he defined in advance, and also see the milestone results and the metric results. And once you've done that, he can take a decision if what's the next step. So should he move to a full RFP or just move to a sole source, request for another pilot, or not, or decide not to move forward. One of the main benefits that we see is that people really like this PDF report. So in a click of a button, you can really get a nice report with all the data of the pilot, and no matter where you are in the process. So if it's so you can just really see all the data, and you can share it with your boss, with the city manager, with the council. So that's about that. Maybe the last thing that I would like to share is this vision of explore or share and learn, where you can see pilots from different cities and different entities in the country, and you can filter them either by organization or keyword or a vendor, and just learn, for example, all the pilots that are happening now in Boston, and just see what's happened there. So this is something that we are still working on, but at the moment, it's great transparency in the organization. We believe that later on it will be between organizations. That's my part. Yeah.
Thank you, Arik. I'm curious in which ways your product is different from others that local governments might choose from.
Sure. So one thing that we see is that most of the cities that we are working are in actually spreadsheet, and in some cases some project management tool. And we believe that once the city have more than 5-10 pilots, it makes sense to have a specific program or app that help them to manage this, to help to create the report, to help to create a team around it, to help to see the whole portfolio and manage it. Taking all the data, put all the data in one place, and really help them to track the results. So there are many things that will develop specifically for governments and vendors and piloting and experiments in the government.
Great, thank you. We're gonna come back. If people have any specific questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But we have our final presentation from Tony Shawcross with the Open Media Foundation. Tony, please take it away.
Thanks, Christopher. And if you can give me the screen sharing, I appreciate it. So yeah, my name is Tony Shawcross with the Open Media Foundation. I'm going to be talking to you about a software, web-based software for streaming and archiving video of your government meetings. The software you can find at open.media. It was built originally for the Colorado State Legislature, the coloradochannel.net. We're streaming and archiving for the last 10 years all the meetings of the Colorado House and Senate. And after a few years of doing that with a commercial provider, Granicus, which some of you may be familiar with, we realized that with YouTube starting to offer free streaming services, and with other archiving solutions from archive.org, the Internet Archive, and other tools that are just readily available and free, and in many ways surpassing the functionality of the commercial services, that we could build a much more accessible, much more affordable tool for streaming and archiving video of government proceedings by building it on top of those tools. So the software uses YouTube's APIs to leverage their streaming, which gives us a lot of functionality that other services don't have, like automated transcriptions, automated closed captions, live captions, translations, and much more mobile responses where you can watch it on your cell phones or on really any device. So it's affordable for governments of any size. We built it it can serve large governments like the state of Colorado, House, Senate, and Supreme Court, but also very small governments. We have the town of Silverton or town of Central City with populations of under 1,000 using the software as well. You know, there's over 100,000 government entities in the U.S., and actually over half of them serve these small populations of under 5,000. So we provide the software actually for free to governments serving under 5,000 constituents. You know, we find that a lot of governments really want to be providing the kind of transparency that you've just seen with OpenGov and with UrbanLeap, and they want engagement. It just also often takes a lot of effort. So we built the software to just really streamline and simplify the process of streaming your meetings, of archiving your meetings, of making your agendas and your minutes accessible to the public, to help engage the public in ways that just couldn't happen if that video wasn't available. You know, we feel like people shouldn't have to make the trek down to City Hall in order to engage with local government. Pretty soon it'll be the norm for us to all be streaming and archiving these meetings if you're not already doing it. And if you are, I'd still encourage you to look at the services available through Open Media. You may be able to increase your transparency and accessibility and reduce your costs. Again, we're free for small governments. We don't think price should ever be a barrier to transparency. You know, the first government that we implemented this was the Colorado State House of Representatives. We increased their web traffic by over 140% while cutting their costs in half in the first year, and then set out to release a version of this that could be used by any government. Just last year, we launched this software accessible to any government at open.media, providing free, simple self-implementation. Lots of governments have just implemented this totally by themselves without any help from us, which you can see at open.media. And then you add this intelligent search where if you're interested in fracking, for example, you can see every time that issue came up on an agenda or every time it was even spoken during the meeting. All that archived video is presented alongside your agendas, which can be indexed by you or even automatically based on the words spoken and how they match with the agenda that you upload into our software, and easily shared via social media. Again, we're free for small governments, have a discounted rate for medium-sized governments, and our rate is usually a lot cheaper than the commercial options for even large governments, $6,000 a year for governments serving 50,000 people or more. You can set it up on your own at open.media. I'm going to go through and show you some client sites now. So here's the city of Eugene, which is Next Century Cities city, and you can just pick any issue you care about. So we're going to do broadband, and you'll see every time broadband was on the agenda for any of the city council meetings. Also, anytime anyone just said the word broadband, and you can find the one. Here's this community broadband strategy plan. You can just jump to that session of the meeting, and it'll jump to right when they're talking about broadband.
Regional Prosperity Economic Development Plan, the Climate and Energy Action Plan. We also recently worked with the state of Oregon to do a community broadband strategic plan.
So, and you can see the agenda, and for other communities, we also have a great minutes function where you can look through the minutes. And again, as they're taking minutes during the meeting, you can jump to the section of the meeting where they're talking about whatever issue it is that you care about. It'll jump to that moment in the meeting. And again, you can implement this yourself at open.media. There's this little try it now button where you can set up your own implementation or give us a call. Phone number and contact information is there on the site. So again, that's just a high-level overview. We're happy to also answer any questions in the Q&A section.
Great, thank you, Tony. I'd like to just ask a couple of quick questions. One of them is, I have to admit, being a little bit frustrated with some of the competitors in this space with usability, and you seem to be more usable. What do you think sets you apart from others that are active in this space?
Well, it's really hard for organizations like Akamai or any of these white label solutions that a lot of the commercial competitors use to keep up with, like YouTube. I mean, YouTube is a tough organization to keep up with. They're innovating at a rate that nobody else is. They had HD streaming before anyone else. They had 4K streaming before anyone else. They had automated transcriptions before anyone else. They had live. Now they're having live captions. We were actually the first state government to try their automated live caption service with the Colorado State House and Senate last year. Because of that, we can focus really on the usability, the back end, the user experience. We're also really excited about working with governments, like the governments participating in Next Century Cities, that really they aren't just looking to check off a box. They're really looking to expand engagement and get more people engaged in democracy. And that's what we're really focused on. It's not about checking a box and saying, oh, we have a statute that requires us to do this, so we're going to do it. We're working with governments that really want the public engaged and focusing on making our tool be as appealing and useful as possible to both the governments that we're serving and to the public.
And would you characterize yourselves as being, as new technologies develop, as being, you mentioned that you're among the first to implement some of the stuff in regarding with YouTube and some of the open captions, I think. Are you more rapid to add features? Are you more quick to add features than others in this space?
I mean, yeah, because our approach and our infrastructure is totally open, we will leverage the tools, the best tools we see coming out of the out of the sector. So when we see a new tool coming out from live streaming Vimeo or from archive.org, we try and implement that into the software, which is so much easier because we're not providing a closed solution where you need to download our software or implement Silverlight or something like that in order to use our software. And plus, we're leveraging the innovation of these other groups so we can focus on innovations that nobody else is doing. A great example of that is auto-indexing. If you upload an agenda that has kind of a syntax that our software can understand, like Roman numeral 1 is this agenda item, and then you actually read that agenda item, our software will take the automated transcriptions, will hear you say that agenda item, and will timestamp it for you and say, oh, now we realize you're talking about this agenda item or that agenda item. Those are features that we haven't seen anyone else in the market have. Also, really simple sharing to social media. I don't know if I can still share my screen or not. Doesn't look like it, but the social media sharing tools are very simple oh, here, good, I'll share that. So when the Colorado State Legislature more than doubled the traffic to their site, it wasn't because we were getting the word out. It was because people were using these simple tools to share these clips via Facebook and Twitter. So you can see on my screen now, I believe. Can you guys see the screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good. You can see here that it's just sharing this little excerpt just from 1,812 seconds in until the end point that you click, and sharing that via Facebook, which gets more and more people engaged in the conversation. So when the Colorado State Legislature more than doubled their traffic, when we looked at it, almost 100% of that traffic increase was due to community members sharing these excerpts on Facebook and getting people who really otherwise wouldn't be even visiting their site engaged. And we know that video is the primary way to get the public engaged.
Great, that's really helpful. Mark, I'd like to ask you, sort of building on that, do you have any sort of similar anecdotes or additional stories about how OpenGov has had an impact in a budgeting process or in a community decision-making process because of its openness? And let me, before you answer, let me also just remind people that this was an opportunity to throw questions into the chat or to send them to Kat Blake, cblake@nextcenturycities.org, and we'll get to those questions shortly. But Mark, any additional anecdotes you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely. So we've had a lot of success in opening up the budgeting process, as well as allowing governments to share information both in normal times as well as times of crisis. A couple of examples come to mind. Just a few months ago, there was an extremely unfortunate situation in Northern California with wildfires. And this was a very difficult time for many local governments. And there were thousands of people who were affected by these fires. And one of our customers is the city of Redding, California, and in combination with Shasta County. And they had a need to be able to very quickly communicate with their public to make everyone aware of where they could go for disaster relief, recovery, submitting for funding, and making decisions like that. And so, literally within 48 hours from concept to deployment, the city of Redding and Shasta County were able to use OpenGov to build a presence on the web to bring everyone into this very complex situation of figuring out where relief efforts are, how to get connected to different funding sources. That's one example. There are other examples where, for example, we are doing initiative-based budgeting, essentially allowing governments. There is a government in the state of Washington where there is a homelessness crisis, and the city council has basically instructed the local government to bring everyone together in terms of grant money coming in at the state level, and to be able to make those funding decisions along with local sources and leveraging existing budgets, things like the police department, community outreach teams, bringing that all together into a concerted strategy to address the local homelessness crisis. And so being able to leverage the transparency of OpenGov financial reporting, being able to leverage the performance metrics that we provide and that the government is able to track progress with, bringing that all together to make more informed spending decisions, but importantly, not make those decisions in a vacuum, but enable all the different constituents, both public as well as within government, to see the information on a real-time basis and show the outcomes and measure those outcomes. So yeah, I mean, we are basically bringing together lots of public information to that process. It's a fully open process that really facilitates conversation.
Great, I appreciate those examples. Arik, I was curious for you, some of the trends that you're seeing, and I would guess, again, these are probably more common among the more urbanized local governments, but what are some of the trends that you're seeing around innovation with your platform?
Yeah, thank you. So I think that we see one phenomenon that we see is moving from smart city to smart region. So it means creating community of cities and counties that are working together to solve regional problems and sharing and learning. So, for example, I just participated last week in a conference in Florida, and I heard the city of San Antonio creating a community with all the 9 agencies in the region. We are doing something similar with the county of San Mateo, where they created a smart region, or with Sacramento Area Council of Government, where they are collaborating 22 cities and 6 counties. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is what Startup in Residence started, and now it's a phenomenon of challenge-based procurement. So using challenge, get proposals from startup, and by doing it in a very transparent way, you can actually do the RFP before the pilot, and then there is a way legally to move from pilot to full procurement without the need to do an RFP. And I would love to elaborate more later. So that's the two phenomena that we see a lot. Yeah, and just see, yeah, we see that cities are trying to do more and more experiments around new technologies all over the country.
And we had a question come in that was directed at Tony, although I think this is something that you all could answer. And that's advice for someone who might be ambitious and enthusiastic about using these solutions locally, but having to convince their local government to adopt them. So Tony in particular looking, and I suspect, I think this was a question that was specifically looking at small town governments. Do you have advice for how to, for what people can do to influence their government to adopt this platform?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things. I love some of that data that Mark shared at the beginning of theirs that shows the actual time savings and cost savings of implementing these tools. Our goal, I think all three of these organizations' goal, it isn't adding the work to your plate, but it's figuring out a way to increase this engagement while hopefully reducing costs and reducing workload. I think also a lot of times the higher ups in the government are persuaded when there is additional support. So, as the Open Media Foundation, we're a nonprofit organization ourselves. We provide, the way that these discounts happen for us for these lower costs is through matching grants or just direct grants from the Open Media Foundation. So I think being able to convey that, that there's this nonprofit partner in the Open Media Foundation that is here to help, and depending on your population size, even willing to provide a matching or a complete grant to help cover the costs of providing this. I think both of those things go a long way. And we're currently conducting a case study with Orton Family Foundation where we are measuring the time that it took these organizations to post audio files or to post other transparency requirements that again weren't as engaging or as useful to the public. And in many cases, these governments are saving time by utilizing our tools. So I'd say those are my two top suggestions. Look for nonprofit partners and community partners like ours that'll help make sure that you aren't doing this alone. And then second, really tout those time and cost savings where they are available.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, this is Mark. I'd actually like to jump in there. It is a really good question. There's kind of two things I'd say to build off of what Tony just talked about. The first one is being realistic to get started with a scope that is achievable and leveraging the learnings of others who have come before you. So in terms of scope, I always advise the governments that we work with to pick an initial target. Don't try to tackle every conceivable operation within your community. Look at one of the areas that has the most impact, like whether it was the homelessness example I used earlier, maybe you're trying to budget for a certain grant or a capital project. So begin there. That's a way to kind of rally everyone around a very well-defined goal. And the second one is just learning from others who have come before you. We're happy to share lots of great public examples. There are so many. I mean, Ravalli County, Bernalillo County, Burnett, Texas, South Padre Island in Texas. I mentioned Anoka County earlier, Palo Alto, California. There are just so many communities. We have a lot of them listed on the website, but just in general, I think asking questions from your peers in other governments who've done this, who've been doing this for a while, is just a great way to get on the ground learnings for how to be successful and how to go from current state to a desired state and get off the ground.
Great. Arik, did you have any comments for how people might be encouraged to encourage their local government to adopt your platform?
Basically, I think that we really want to. We are very early. So we are working with 7 cities and counties, but we are really looking forward to find a way to work with all different types of cities and counties, and we would love to just approach us, and we'll tailor-made a solution that will make sense for both parties.
Great. Let me ask if there's any closing comments. I can start with Mark, and if not, we're out of questions, so we'll wrap up just a little bit early, but if you have any closing comments, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll make it brief. I appreciate the opportunity. We're seeing more and more governments across the country who are trying to affect constituents with real information and real transparency in the budgeting process. And that requires preparation to show the community where their tax dollars are going, how they're being spent, and the outcomes being achieved. And I think one of the really big things that we're excited about is translating the strategic plan of the government into those daily decisions and that daily progress, because everyone's busy. There's a lot of different services that government needs to deliver. How to communicate this complex information to everyday people who have jobs, who have day jobs, who don't have a lot of time to parse the details and wade through, detailed budget books and annual reports, but who really care about, how does my daughter get to school in the morning, or what is the traffic situation? How is that going to be improved? Or are we really serious about addressing drug addiction and homelessness? And so being able to have a clearly defined strategic plan that outlines the priorities for your community with community feedback, and then relate how you're actually doing there, and then the budget decisions being made, we find that driving a level of constructive engagement in that whole process that benefits everyone. It makes the city staff life easier because people are more informed and have more trust on what's going on, and it makes the community a lot more involved in that process. So we've been really encouraged by that.
Good. Arik, do you have any closing comments?
Yes, I think that as someone who worked in the public sector for a few years, I know how hard it is to work there. I know that there are so many challenges, and it's just hard. And we really want to be the tool for local governments to make their life a bit easier, and to make their life help them to achieve their goals and make the life of all of us much better. So yeah, we are excited to work with Pittsburgh and Las Vegas and the county of San Mateo and others, but we really want to work with more and create this kind of sharing and learning community. So that's the main thing.
Great. Tony, closing comment. But first of all, just to clarify, your platform supports both archived and live distribution of meetings, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Or is it
the archive?
Okay.
Yeah. And you can look at any of those example sites listed at open.media and see both the live as well as the archive.
And people can watch in real time then a meeting that's currently happening if the local government is allowing that.
Correct. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Closing comments.
Yeah, I think our closing comments similar to Arik's and Mark's. We really applaud the work that these communities are doing with Next Century Cities. These are the kinds of communities we want to be working with, communities that are looking at leveraging emerging tools to expand engagement and to serve their public. That's what we're here for. We're a nonprofit organization here to support governments that are trying to engage the public, trying to get people active in democracy that maybe haven't always been, trying to get people working with their state and local governments at a time when trust in our federal government is at an all-time low. We think democracy works best when every individual is engaged. That's why the broadband work you guys are doing is so important too. Everyone needs access, and these tools provide accessibility for people that maybe can't get down to City Hall and also provides accessibility through tools that the younger generations and the millennials have come to expect. We need video, we need these kinds of tools and visuals for the community to really engage. So I applaud, all the work that all the communities are doing with Next Century Cities, and want to make sure they know we're here to help them accomplish their goals and engage their public.
Thank you. I certainly didn't know the nature of your mission, and so I've definitely learned something from each of you today. That in particular was something that I feel like I probably should have known beforehand. So thank you, Mark, Arik, and Tony. And I'll turn this back over to Kat. This was a very enlightening discussion. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you again to all of our presenters for sharing your innovative solutions and taking the time to demo each of your platforms. One last reminder for our audience members that this webinar will be available on our YouTube page and on the resources section of nextcenturycities.org later this afternoon, should you want to share it with any colleagues or rewatch it for more information. So thank you again to our panelists and our audience members for joining the webinar today. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.